So our conference theme this year is Be Fierce. The idea of showing heartfelt and powerful intensity towards what it is that we do. We know that in order to do audacious and fierce things, we have to start with a place of connection and trust. And that's why we kicked things off with Charles Vogel. How many of you enjoyed his talk? Woo! And hopefully over the past 2 days, you've collected other nuggets of learning from either our speakers, sponsors, and each other. We are now gathered for our closing keynote. Campbell-Pretty is an author, speaker, strategist, and enterprise transformation coach. Her introduction to Agile practice started 20 years after she had been in senior business roles. And she's now working with companies all over the world, building great leaders and transforming culture. Personally, she's one of my favorite Agile people, and now I'm going to start crying. She's somebody who always listens to understand, has a genuine curiosity about people, and helps challenge how you think about things. She's here to bring it all together and provide insight on how we as leaders can survive and thrive by letting go of everything that we think we have to lose and take a radical leap into the unknown, with or without a net. Please help me welcome Campbell-Pretty.
Afternoon, folks. Wow. I came all the way from Melbourne, Australia, and that's all you've got? Afternoon, folks. Having a good conference? Yeah. I see many of you are poised at the back doors for a quick escape. Interesting. Are you worried that I'm not going to be good, or... No? Okay. We'll talk about it later. It's really great to be back in Colorado. Spent a crazy amount of time here over the last few years. It's one of my favourite places. I actually gave my first Agile conference talk here in 2013, I think. I launched my book here. It was in 2016. I met my wife here. So thank you very much for giving her to me. She lives in Australia now. She misses the mountains. I'm sure that's something that you all would appreciate. So when I did first come to Colorado, I landed in Denver and drove to Boulder. And I came here for a safe program consultant class with Dean Leffingwell. Of course, you're all going, and what does that have to do with being fierce? I'll get there. In the meantime, my wife says that you have no idea that a ute is actually a pickup truck. So we'll just clarify that for you. So, back to this fierce business. Fierce? Heartfelt, powerful intensity. Yeah? Australians don't like to talk about this much, but they are the world's most successful rugby team. It's New Zealand All Blacks. They're pretty incredible. This video was played in this SPC class I went to. And following this video, Dean proceeded to show videos that his clients had made of their teams doing their own huckers. And I thought, isn't that fun? Maybe my teams would like to do huckers. So I head home, having learnt nothing about anything except huckers, and I tell my leadership team of this brilliant idea I've had. I explain, I saw these huckers done by these teams, and couldn't we get our teams to do these huckers? And the resident extrovert goes, excellent idea. Quite like him. One of the others said, you cannot make me do a hucker on my birthday. I mean, that was like a dare, right? And the other, he quite cracks me up actually, he was a consultant for one of the big 4 accounting firms, and he says to me, do we have to? And I'm like, you're a consultant? You work for one of the big 4? I'm your client. I would like a hucker, please. So I kind of gave up on that lot, went and spoke to the Scrum Masters. I can't say that they were exactly bouncing off the walls with excitement. However, they were willing, they thought it could be interesting, and I decided that that was good enough and perhaps that we could go and do this thing. So I got up in front of all the teams the next week at the beginning of the sprint and said, here is my idea. What I would like to do is I'd like you all to go and create your own huckers, and the beginning of next sprint we'll have a huck-off. So 2 weeks later, this is what I got.
No noise. So as the Maori will translate afterwards. Tarina! Wakarono! Kairite! Kairite! Ko miti miti! Ko miti miti! Timata maitai! Rarauna! Wanana! Ruanuku! Kia! Kino! Kia! Kino! Ah! Barake! Barake! Wakamatauto! Makamaka! Loro! Flexa! Flexa! Simo! Simo! Everything! Listen up with your ears. Prepare yourselves to integrate. Profile data before you start. Consult with SMEs as hard as you can. And then as we went into it, I develop, I test, I deploy, computer man.
Fierce? Heartfelt? Powerful intensity? It was a bit of fun. It was a bit of fun. I can't show you some of the others, they're not fit for public consumption. So a couple of weeks after this, I get this really, really awesome email from one of the Scrum Masters. He says, since doing the Hucker exercise, and aside from the fact I lost my voice, everyone across the teams have been congratulatory of the other teams and their members. It has instilled a massive cross-pollination of communication and engagement going on. The quieter team members from various teams across the department are having animated corridor conversations. The level of talking and noise being generated in the different team areas has been much higher, even late into the night. Further, people are less tense and defensive in general discussions across the department. People are open and honest after having embarrassed themselves. Basically, the teams are showing greater interest, engagement and hunger for what they do and what they are about. How do you quantify all of this? You don't. But what I do know is that the teams are more galvanised and have a much stronger sense of their own context and being part of the greater whole. So what I figure is, if you're not into throwing dinner parties, Team Hucker is a way to get to community. It's kind of true. It's kind of true. What What Charles called community yesterday morning, I would potentially call tribal unity. How do we connect teams of teams? How do we connect communities? And it's actually, the key is shared experience. So the dinner parties were shared experience. The huckers were a shared experience. And this is something you need to make time to build into how you work. Or how you be, right? Whether you are hosting conferences, whether you are hosting meetups, dinner parties, huckers, you name it, creating time for shared experience creates community. My favourite approach, something I like to call Unity Hour, is bringing together all the folks that are working on team of teams, on a program, in a department, whatever makes sense, and maybe those outside that would like to be part of the community. And we spend the first hour of every sprint being together, playing Agile games, doing huckers, sharing war stories, learning from each other, eating donuts, spending time together, creating shared experiences. And it takes a bit of fierceness, right? How do you get an organisation to agree, we're going to take an hour every sprint, we're just going to hang out and have fun? Fierce leader, fierce teams, fierce scrum masters. You've got to be committed to making that happen. Of course, I wasn't always this way. I wasn't always interested in Agile, and I certainly wasn't always interested in building fierce Agile teams. In fact, in 2009, this is pretty much what happened when somebody said Agile to me. What is that? What was explained to me by this lovely project manager who had been asked to run her project using progressive elaboration, because she couldn't say Agile because that was a very bad word. So she explains to me that what's going to happen is that we're going to form some scrums. Okay. And then they're going to sprint. Sure. Then we're going to hand them some requirements, lock them in a room for a month, and at the end of the month, they're going to emerge with code. I'm like, is it really nutty? You're really strange. Thanks for sharing. I've got to go now. So a couple of years later, I actually get to experience Agile. So my first Agile experience is the result of a waterfall program. I'm pretty sure that's how all good Agile stories start. This particular program had spent 3 months in feasibility. It had determined that it was feasible. Sure. The next step was for the business to produce a BRD, a business requirements document. So the business hires 14 consultants. The 14 consultants run around the organisation. They interview 144 people. They create a 200-page document. They have that signed off by 41 executives. Only takes a year. So at the end of the year, they have the signed off document, and the process in this organisation says, you must now produce a business case. So the way this works is the business folks take their 200-page document, they walk over to the building where the IT folks are, and they say, we would like a solution and a time and cost estimate. And several months later, the technology folks emerge with their solution and time and cost estimate. What does the business say? Too much, too long. And to make it a little bit more entertaining, solution's not strategic enough. So if you could just go away, come up with a more strategic solution, but make it cheaper and faster. So they disappear for many months. They come back with a more strategic solution. What happens to the time and cost? It's gone up. So at this point, this has been going on for a year. Of course, not a line of code has been written. And the decision is to scope this thing back down to what they think they can finish in what remains of the financial year, which was they called 10 projects. So we're away. We've got 10 projects, we've got 10 months, life is good. The next thing that happens is the technology teams now need to write requirements definition documents. So they run workshops every morning, every afternoon with stakeholders, starting all 10 projects at once, because that was the only way all 10 were going to get done by the end of the year. That gets us to midpoint, at which time I get asked to sponsor this in-flight thing, and they are having daily meetings. So there's a daily meeting between myself and the IT general manager, and he is very upset about SRSs. And of course I say, what's an SRS? He tells me it's a systems requirement specification. I said, that's awesome. Why do I care? He says, oh, that's the doc we're going to send to the offshore team so they know what to build. I'm like, oh, sounds important. So I help him get his RDD signed off so he can send his SRSs to the offshore team. It's another 3 months. Eventually, at the very end of the financial year, we, with 2-3 months to go, they go into build and test. And then on the last day of the financial year, the first of the 10 projects enters user acceptance testing. It spent 6 months in user acceptance testing. It was accepted. To the best of my knowledge, that software has never been used. So, as a new business sponsor of this program that delivers nothing, I have decided that we have to find another way, right? This is not sustainable. As it turns out, there was some change afoot. Agile had gone from a bad word to this is what we're going to do. The CIO stood up on stage at the local Agile conference and said, we will be 80% Agile in 2 years. So a number of years ago, hasn't happened yet, but anyway. And he picks off his top 10 projects across the enterprise that are going to go Agile. So my project isn't one of these. I am displeased. I have a very large project. I feel that, and I've got a very large problem. So I go to the director who has responsibility for delivering my program of work, and I say, we should be allowed to be Agile too. And he says, okay. And I'm like, this is really weird. As it turns out, he had a KPI that he had to have some percentage of his projects Agile in the year. We were halfway through the year. He didn't have any Agile projects. I was very noisy and annoying. This was a solution. So it's interesting. So I've always thought or remembered this moment in that way. But I was thinking about it. And I'm going, was it truly dumb luck? Was I in the right place at the right time, and I asked the right question, and we got to go Agile? Or was there something else going on? I'd forgotten, until I started thinking about it, that at that point in time, I had been reading and reading and reading about Agile. This is how I read, in case it's unclear. This is terrible. I had read about stand-ups, so I had decided that the technology teams needed to do stand-ups. So I'm inflicting stand-ups on the technology teams who are telling me that they're being micromanaged. And this is the only Agile we're doing, right? They have to stand up for 15 minutes once a day. I read a book. It was awesome. But I'm getting really passionate about this idea. So perhaps this being passionate is what changed things. Maybe it was just dumb luck. Either way, we get to go. I get to go on 2 days of Agile fundamentals training. I get to take my team, our IT counterparts come with us, and hey presto, we're Agile. That's how it works, right? Well, I don't know what we were. I'm not sure I want to call it Agile. Let me just explain a little bit of what goes on in this part of my history. The first project is kicked off by putting 20 people in a room meant for 10 people, where they spend 6 weeks writing user stories on index cards. At the end of which, I'm the proud owner of $500,000 worth of index cards. We had an Agile coach who told a 35-person Agile team, don't even start, that they should only write stories about things that have business value. So they didn't write any stories about spinning up environments or anything like that. Yeah, working software didn't exactly emerge from that project in any hurry. Another bright spark told one of the teams that any story bigger than a 13 was a 13. That team took 3 months to deliver their first story. However, all of this aside, this Agile, Wagile, whatever it was still better than what was going on before. So after my year of living dangerously, there is an organisational shuffle, and they spill and fill everyone. I don't know if that's a term that's used here. Basically, everybody loses their job, everybody gets to apply for whatever jobs are now available. It's really fun. We get to do it in most enterprises once or twice a year. So I do the good deed. I apply for the thing that looks most like my job, and I don't get it. So I'm pretty bummed. Some bright spark says, well, given you've got nothing to do, which is kind of true, you should become the general manager of the technology delivery team. He explained, well, he doesn't explain to me, but I find out later, that they had done a nationwide search. They could not find anybody willing to take on this team. Lucky I was available. My response? Bad idea. Really bad idea. To be clear, I've never worked in technology. I'm not a technologist. I don't have a computer sciences degree. In fact, I don't have a degree at all. This doesn't seem like a very good idea. So I'm telling my tale of woe to a friend and colleague, and she says to me, Em, you're crazy. You are never going to get an opportunity like this again. Who in their right mind is going to hand a business person one of the largest technology teams in the company? This could be career changing for you. What have you got to lose? Good point. Nothing to lose. I take the job. So, it's not bad. It's not great, but it's not bad. I have read, this is prior to my trip to Boulder for the SPC class. At this point, I have read 2 books by Dean Leffingwell and been on a 2-day Agile Fundamentals class. So clearly, what I am very qualified to do is start launching Agile release trains. Why not? At this point, this gets better. At this point, there is no scaleagileframework.com. There are no SAFe certification classes. There are no SAFe program consultants. So we're really just kind of adrift at sea with these couple of books. I had no idea. I don't think I really understood that what I was doing was something that people didn't actually just do all the time. It was actually kind of new. Anyway, it worked out all right. We launched Australia's first Agile release train. We turned around the culture of the organisation from toxic to what I would call unity. We went from a place where nobody wanted to work and we couldn't retain and we couldn't hire people to a place where people were dying to come and work with us, just queuing up, calling up all the time. Big, big change. So on the back of this success, my world changes. I get to come to Boulder, I talk at Rally On, I go to Sydney, I talk at Agile Australia, I become a case study, one of the first 10 case studies in the world for Scaled Agile Framework, I launch my own business, I write a book, and I get to Keynote Mile High Agile. How cool's that? All because I had nothing to lose. Or did I? Because here's the interesting thing. I made the choice to do something radical because I felt I had nothing to lose. But if I hadn't taken the job, I wouldn't have had a job. If I hadn't successfully transformed that department, I wouldn't have had a job. So, did I have nothing to lose? Or did I actually have everything to lose? It's interesting. It's so much about how you perceive it at the point in time. You know, I was adrift, I couldn't swim, I didn't know what to do, and I always tell people I was in the right place at the right time. And there was this reshuffle, and I got this opportunity, and I took this job, and look at all that luck I had. Or maybe I was just incredibly determined, passionate, driven. Maybe I just didn't want to lose, whether I had nothing to lose or everything to lose. These days I work a lot with leaders, and a lot of these leaders are like me. They've had 2 days of Agile fundamentals training, and the organisation is asking them to go Agile. And they're going, do I go small? Do I go big? Do I go gradually? Do I go a team at a time, a person at a time, department at a time, all in, all at once? What do I do? Interestingly, the more the leader perceives that they have something to lose, the less risk they are likely to take and the less successful they seem to be. Although, I kind of wonder if they all have something to lose. Just a matter of how they see it. I have very fond memories of the first leader I coached. She was a very traditional, very successful command and control program manager type. She had done 20 years of successful program delivery. She was really respected by her peers. She was respected by her stakeholders. She was feared by her team. And she wanted to be agile, right up until the point that I told her that we were just going to let the teams work out what the plan was. And then the teams were going to commit to that plan and the teams were going to deliver on it. And she's like, that's not how it works. I'll let her explain.
Maybe two months ago, there are a number of things that I think I understood intellectually. And this one I wrote down on the board, trust the team. And it was really only until the end of our two-day PSI planning period that I did actually really understand that. To see the fact that we actually were able to stand up this train together and put on that 2-day planning period and come out of the end of it with a really solid plan together made me see that that the team actually they actually did the work and we just created the environment for them to do that work in.
It was her telling her peers across technology about her experience. It was a very proud coaching moment for me. I went on, a year or so later, I get brought into one of Australia's largest banks to help this guy take his program Agile. He has inherited a 6-year waterfall program that is reaching its conclusion. His job is to get the last couple of releases out the door and flip the organisation to Agile. I really felt for him. He didn't even have 2 days of Agile fundamentals training. He, really interesting cat, sits down, tells me his tale of woe and says, I don't know anything about Agile, what do I need to read and what training do I need to do? I'm like, this guy's awesome. Because really, what happens most of the time is I suggest to leaders that it would be a really good idea if they did some reading, learnt something about what it was we were about to do, and that kind of goes nowhere. But this guy takes a reading list from me, actually reads it, pretty impressed. The challenge we had, though, was time. He had to he was working in a place where they had enterprise releases. So the waterfall program needed to drop in release whatever number, and then the next release, which was 8 weeks later, he was expected to deliver Agile. So I don't know exactly in that plan how the organisation perceived that we were going to bring about any change. So I tell him about this thing I learned about in a training class. Apparently you can change your entire organisation in a week. We'll do 2 days of team training, we'll do 2 days of planning as a team of teams, and we will be agile. I have no idea to this day why he let me do this to his organisation. None whatsoever. When I was thinking about this, I sent him a note. He hasn't replied. We may not be talking. That's not true. It went really, really well. It sounds utterly nuts. Why would you do that? But what we got to do is put everybody in the same room with the same trainers, hear the same message, start to build community, and then immediately use that training to build a plan. So no one has to take a class, go back to the old way of working, try to work out what to do until such time as they're allowed to use the training. And what they got was step change. I love this. I went and visited them 4 weeks later, and one of them says to me, I feel like there was a greater sense of accomplishment with the delivery of the first 2 sprints than there was over the last 2 years of this program. So he thought he had nothing to lose. He took a very bold step. He got a really awesome outcome. These guys inspired a movement inside their organisation, and all because he thought he had nothing to lose. A year or so later, I would come across another client. Again, nothing to lose, or so it seemed. The morale was horrible. They had been Agile transformed by another one of those top 4 consulting, top 4 accounting organisations that had written them a 60-step Agile process with Jira templates for every step. My job is to scale this Agile. I'm like, this should be entertaining. So one of the problems we need to solve is how do we get them from their functional teams into cross-functional teams? And I tell them about this talk I heard at a conference. Sandy Mamoli talking about squadification, or what is often referred to as self-selection. The idea is the teams work out for themselves what teams they should be in. And the leadership of this particular group says to me, that sounds like a really great idea, Em, but we won't be doing that here. We're a bank. Very good point. Very, very good point. So another twist of fate. The organisation wants to realise the benefits from the Agile transformation. So this guy is told he has to get 30% of his team out the door next 60 days, I think. So that does nothing for morale, surprisingly. And never one to miss an opportunity. I suggest to him that, maybe this self-selection thing would be really fun. At this point, he goes, what have I got to lose? So he does it. And it's awesome. The teams work it out, and it's not perfect, and it's not without hiccups, but it's awesome. They start to change the morale, they start to change what's going on. The buzz is they're in an office that's 7 floors, open plan, so everyone's noise goes into the atrium, and everyone's going, what is going on level 5? Because they can hear the change that's taking place. Unfortunately for him, I don't know if he had nothing to lose or everything to lose, but the organisation had lost patience. And while he got to go and do that great thing and create that great department, he didn't actually get to see it through. They did survive, they kept going, but he was seen as having waited too long to make the change. Makes me wonder if he had thought earlier that he had nothing to lose or something to lose, or just considered it differently, if he'd have made an earlier move. Because it was the same move we talked about. I'd known him for probably 8 months by that point. If we'd just moved earlier, would he have gotten a different outcome? So the challenge is always to improve. Always get better, even when you're the best, especially when you're the best. time for a quick exercise. So, you've been here for 2 days. I'm kind of hoping you learnt something. Okay, 3 people nodded, this is awesome. So what I'd like you to do is think about all the great ideas you heard over the last couple of days, and think about what 1, 2, whatever, doesn't matter, what one of them, just any one of them, that you might like to try when you get back to the office, and what might be stopping you from following through. Now, I'd like you to talk to your friends. If you are like me and introverted and talking to other people is a really horrible thought, you don't have to talk to anybody. I'm not going to make you. But it's nice if you can share. So I'd invite you to share or contemplate on your own. What did you learn? What are you going to do? And what's stopping you? What's going to stop you? You have 5 minutes, folks. Discuss. Okay, so I'm guessing some of you said the thing that's standing in your way is your leader, your manager, or the frozen middle. Anyone? Okay, is your manager here? Are they watching you? Look, it's a really, really common thing, right? The most common thing I get asked about when I ask anybody to do something daring in terms of changing their organisation is, I can't. How do I get my managers to do that? They won't do that. I'm not allowed to do that. I always tell them, don't ask permission. I don't know. That doesn't always go down well. So perhaps a different approach. Something to think about if you are in that space. Sometimes it's not easy being a manager. As a recovering middle manager, I can tell you that what often happens in organisations when we go Agile is somebody at the very top of the organisation says, "Go Agile now!" And the teams hear that we're going Agile and get very excited and we need to be more Agile and we need to deliver more stuff. And this poor manager is adrift by themselves, kind of lonely actually, because you're getting all this top-down pressure, you're getting all this bottom-up pressure, and if your experience is anything like mine, you went to 2 days of Agile fundamentals training where you got told you were a chicken and your job was to say nothing. Do not interfere with the teams, you are a chicken. For me, I was terrified if I spoke to a team, somebody was going to call me out. So maybe that's the managers in your world, maybe it's not. Here's my advice. Don't try and boil the ocean. If you can, invite that leader, invite that manager to the Gemba. Invite them into your world. Show them the problem that you are hoping to address and ask if you can run a small experiment. You don't need to change everything day one. You just need to prove that you can change something. So you might want to change the financial budgeting process because, we all know how agile that is in most organisations. I don't recommend going to the CFO and saying, I want to change the agile the budgeting process for the entire organisation because I want to be more agile. Try and get agreement to run a project differently, a department differently, a program differently. Let's run an experiment. What happens when we use a more agile-friendly budgeting approach with just this little piece? Ask for a little experiment. The other thing that I think scares us from taking action is fear of criticism. It's an interesting one. It's very human, it's very normal. We get afraid if we put ourselves out there. Friends, colleagues, bystanders are going to pass judgment on what we do. We try this experiment and we try the wrong experiment. Why'd you pick that? Why'd you pick that version of Agile? Or we try the experiment and we fail. What happens then? It happens to me too. I learnt this week that I'm an expert. I wrote a book. That's right, yeah? Okay. So, figuring what I should do now is write another book. But what if nobody reads it? What if nobody likes it? What if people write bad reviews on Amazon? It's kind of scary. And I'm going to tell you, when I look at my LinkedIn feed and my Twitter feed, and I look at the Agile community, it's kind of interesting how quick people are to share their opinions on somebody else's Agile approach in a very public manner, in a very demeaning manner. It's not easy to put yourself out there. Anyone heard of Bren Brown? Anyone not heard of Bren Brown? Yeah, a few? Okay, that's good. So Bren Brown is a researcher. She researches shame and vulnerability at the University of Houston. A number of years ago, she gave a TED Talk. And this TED Talk goes viral. It's had over 10 million views. She is one of the top 5 TED Talks of all time. I'm going to let her share with you her experience.
I am a researcher, and I never thought I would have a big public career. And so I did a TED Talk that went very viral. And in the wake of that, I was kind of everywhere for a couple of months, on every CNN.com, NPR. It was everywhere, and something I wasn't used to. And the marching orders from my therapist and my husband were, do not read the comments online. So I read all the comments online. And so one morning, I woke up and there were 2 or 3 new articles out, and I started reading the comments. And they were devastating. They weren't about my work, they were about me. They were super personal. And they were the things that creative people play in their mind and then give up doing what they really want to do. Like if I asked every single one of you, what would you try if you knew people would never say this about you? What would this be? Those were the comments that morning. Of course she embraces imperfection. What choice does she have? Look how she looks. I feel sorry for her kids. Less research, more Botox. Just mean personal attacks, the things that really, up until that moment, had inspired me to stay very small in my life and my career, just so I could avoid those things.
So Renee goes on to talk about a quote she found by Teddy Roosevelt that started to help her think differently about what it means to put yourself out there. It's not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust, sweat, and blood, who at best knows in the end triumph of high achievement, and who at worst, if he fails, at least fails while daring greatly. So, these are Daruma dolls. Daruma dolls are Japanese. They're used for goal setting. When you get a Daruma doll, it has blank eyes. What you do is you decide on your goal, and then you colour in the left eye. And when you achieve your goal, you colour in the right eye. I was unable to import 800 Daruma dolls for today. Sorry about that. So you have substitute Darumas in front of you. What I would like you to do is take one of the Daruma doll handouts, write your name on it. Think about how you plan to show up in the arena when you return to work. How are you going to show up in the arena when you return to work? Record your goal. Fill in the left eye. You have 3 minutes. Okay, folks. So, a little bit more advice from the All Blacks. The best kind of practice involves intensity, getting out of your comfort zone, extending yourself in a phrase heard around the All Blacks camp. If you're not growing anywhere, you're not going anywhere. Now, I get it, right? It's not easy. It's definitely not easy for me. So I'll tell you one last little story. So a few years ago, I worked with a team that decided that they were going to enter a corporate competition. And the corporate competition was to show your colours. They had to show your colours. And they had to take photos of themselves, showing their colours and displaying the corporate values. And these guys decide that not only do they want to do this, they want to take it up a notch. They are going to perform a Macarena and create a video of it, and this is how they're going to win the competition so that they can buy an Xbox. Unlike the haka, this is not leader-led, right? This is all them. So this is what happens. You may or may not have noticed I was not in that video. Somebody had to record and take photos. So in this particular world, there was a ceremony at the end of each sprint, and the teams following their retrospectives would send a team member to meet with the leadership and tell us about the systemic impediments that were stopping their team from progressing. This particular sprint, the end of this particular sprint, the impediment is me. M did not do the Macarena. So I go and find the team that was upset, and I explain to them that I don't know how to do the Macarena. And they explained to me that they had read a blog I had written. This was a mistake. So I write this blog about the importance of leaders being able to be vulnerable in front of their teams to create trust. I quote Bren Brown, and basically I'm told I failed on my own advice. I had not played along with the team and been vulnerable. So I make them a deal. So I don't know the Macarena, but I'll give you a bus stop. It doesn't get any better.
Being at Fort Bragg.
So, one of the interesting things about vulnerability, Bren Brown says that to show courage, you need to be vulnerable. Therefore, I think it's fair to say, to be fierce, you need to be vulnerable.
I remember being at Fort Bragg and asking a group of Special Forces troops, give me an example of courage that you experienced in your life, on the field or off the field, or you saw in someone else that didn't require uncertainty, risk, and emotional exposure.
Right.
And there was this long silence, and finally a young man stood up and said, 3 tours, ma'am, there is no courage without vulnerability.
Yeah.
I don't think you can get to courage without the capacity to deal with uncertainty, risk, and emotional exposure.
So, folks, I have an idea. We're all a community, yes? It's the Agile Denver community. Somebody's happy to be here. So it's safe, right? It's a safe place, you know. Most of you not probably with too many colleagues, not too many people are going to see or anything that happens in the next 5 minutes. So we could maybe try being a little bit vulnerable in this safe space and just try it on for size and practice vulnerability. So I'd like to invite those who are probably more on the extroverted joining in side. Lynn, where's Rachel, Candy, I know you people. And then those who are less on the joining in side, Chuck, you can clap along. So I'd invite you to join me in the bus stop. What do you think, folks? All right, let's see. It's pretty simple. Yeah, go this way. Clap. Go this way. Right, clap. Get around. Clap. And go back. And then you're going to sashay the way the guys were, and you're going to change direction. You walk. And go around. Go back the other way. Backwards. Oh, I've got myself muddled up now. Well done, guys. That's what we learn at the school discos at home. All right. So remember, learning is not a spectator sport. You spent 2 days here. You got some ideas, you learnt some things. The only way that really delivers benefit for you is if you do something with it. So take your Darumajols, take your vulnerability, Google the bus stop, go back to the office, teach them how to dance. And I wrote a book. Thank you very much for playing along, guys.
All right. Give her another hand. And she thought she was going to go overtime.
You did well, huh?
You did really well.